I could see how I was when I was his age and how much fishing brought joy to me, and I could see it through my son. And for me, that's the best thing a father could ever ask for.
There's not much better than an epic father-son fishing story, and we've got one for you right here on episode 52, brought to you by reelsandtackle.com.
Welcome to the Telltale Fisherman Podcast, where avid anglers share the story of their best fishing day ever to inspire yours. Now it's time for another epic adventure. So here's your host, John Woodson.
All right, welcome to the show. Today's guest is Quinn Hollingsworth, and he is coming to us from Georgia. Quinn, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. And I'd like to start off by just having you tell everybody where you're from originally and then why it is you are in Georgia, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Quinn Hollingsworth, grew up in the Central Florida area, outside of Orlando, Winter Park, Oviedo, Geneva, Seminole County, Orange County area of Central Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And, basically born and raised there. Went to school for a little bit, college after I graduated high school, and I don't think I was ready for college. I wanted to jump out of airplanes and shoot machine guns. So shortly thereafter, I decided to join the Army, and foolishly, in retrospect, but it was obviously worth it. I said I want to do the hardest thing I can do, and so they said, "Hey, we got this Ranger contract," and I didn't even know what a Ranger was, basically when I was in my AIT, and I was just like, well, cool, yeah, hey, you get to jump out airplanes and do cool stuff, I'll sign up for it. Had no idea what a Ranger Battalion was or what Ranger School was.
Wow.
But I signed up for it, and I think not knowing probably helped me a little bit in my journey, because everything was just kind of surprising and new to me.
Yeah,
and,
I bet.
and somehow I made it through all my training, and I've been in 1st Ranger Battalion out of Savannah since 2009. So a little over 9 years that I've been here in Savannah, and it's absolutely been 100%. One of the best things I ever did, and it's allowed me to meet a lot of really great people and do a lot of really cool stuff. So that's pretty much my little story for the past 10 or so years. And I think I'm going to just continue on keeping doing it.
Well, awesome. And first of all, thank you so much for your service and for your sacrifice. I mean, it's a sacrifice normally just to be in the military, for families in and of itself, but to do what you're doing, wow, that's just a whole nother level. Can you just kind of give us I know it's probably hard to do in just a minute or two, but can you just kind of explain to people how the Rangers are separate within the Army and that next level you really have to go through and train for to get to that level?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously you have, I guess what you would refer to as, the regular Army. There's nothing regular about them. I mean, anybody who decides to raise their right hand and put on a uniform is, definitely has my hats off to all of those. Those looking for maybe a little bit more challenging thing. We have the 75th Ranger Regiment, and basically you just go through once you're done with your basic training, your AIT, your schooling, you go through what's called a Ranger Selection Program, and it's basically a 8-week selection course, and that is to get you into the Ranger Regiment. Upon successful completion of that, you're allowed to wear a tan beret, and you go to one of the 3 Ranger battalions. And basically, in a nutshell, Ranger Battalion is a Special Operations Light Infantry fighting force, basically.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So I would suspect you've seen some pretty amazing things over your 10 years, or I guess 9 years of being in the Rangers now.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty cool stuff. Got to do a lot of really cool stuff as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for your service. And
of course, no problem.
Yeah. So Well, let's talk about your other passion, which I know I think up there and from growing up here in my neck of the woods, where I grew up, has to do with saltwater fishing. I understand
Yeah,
you do
absolutely.
inshore saltwater fishing up there. Tell us a little bit about the kind of fishing you like to do there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the inshore fishing for me, it all started in Central Florida. One of my mom's side of the family is out in Volusia County, towards, like in the DeBary, Deltona area, and then,
Mm-hmm.
not too far from Edgewater. And so I grew up, my dad would take me fishing, same with my uncle and step-granddad. They'd all take me fishing in the Mosquito Lagoon area ever since I was a young kid. So
How
and I
cool.
remember being 6 years old with a popping cork and a live shrimp catching speckled trout out in Mosquito Lagoon.
Yep.
So, that kind of like built the foundation for me, as far as like my love for inshore fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up doing that, all the way up until I joined the Army. And then, I was fortunate enough to, once I had passed all the military training I did, to be assigned to 1st Ranger Battalion, which is in Savannah, Georgia. And, we're pretty much right on the coastline. And, minus the, mangrove trees and the snook, the fishing's, pretty much the same up here. Oh, and I forgot to mention we have an 8-foot tide swing, which
Oh,
took me a
wow.
long time to get used to.
Yeah.
So, other than that, though, it's a great red fishery up here, great trout fishing, and I spend most of my time either fishing in Savannah or just hopping right across the river on 95 and going and fishing South Carolina side. They have
Oh.
another great red fishery up there, and that's pretty much what I target. Is specifically just really I can't get enough of the redfish.
Yeah, no doubt. And when you say it took you a while to get used to the tides, I personally can understand that, but maybe a lot of our listeners won't necessarily. Can you contrast the Mosquito Lagoon where you grew up fishing versus the way things are up there, and why the disparity with tides, even though you're in saltwater in both?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, Mosquito Lagoon, you're looking at maybe 2 foot, 1.5 foot tide. It's not a game changer, like
Mm-hmm.
I don't personally recall like paying attention to the tide so
Yeah.
much. I can remember, getting to some of our creeks back there in Mosquito Lagoon and be like, oh man, the tide's a lot lower than usual, but nothing significant that would impact your fishing.
Right.
So, you come up here and you're dealing with anywhere from like a 6 to a 9 foot on a big flood tide, like in the spring, like we have now, a big flood tide. And, you could literally be fishing in a spot, and I have a Carolina skiff, which I just recently sold. I'm looking for a new boat, but,
Mm.
fishing in my skiff up here, if you're not paying attention to the tides and you're up in a creek and you have an 8-foot tide swing, I mean, you literally could be left high and dry and you're waiting another, 6-7 hours before the tide comes back in and you're stranded back in some creek. And so, it took a lot of, paying attention, talking to, a lot of the locals here. They really kind of, I was always asking questions, just because, it was different. It was similar in the fact that I was targeting the same species, but it was different in the fact that, I was fishing in a different way. So, fishing oyster rakes, fishing, not fishing mangroves, and then again, dealing with the big tide swings.
Right. And you said growing up you fished the Mosquito Lagoon with popping cork and shrimp, which is kind of the same thing I did. We just did it on the other coast. We'd go over to Crystal River and Homosassa and that area and kind of fish those flats. But the same way, I think that was more the style, back when we were growing up. But do you still fish that way, or do you now fish more lures and things? How do you target them up there?
Well, I mean, even in Mosquito Lagoon, so like my fishing kind of like, it kind of evolved as I got older.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like now, if I come back home and we're going and fishing the lagoon, like we're usually getting pretty skinny back up in a creek, and I'm using, a 3000 series spinning reel with,
Yep.
10, 15 pound braid, 30-pound fluorocarbon leader, and I'm just throwing a tiny split shot, a circle hook, and either a live mullet or a shrimp, and I'm tossing it under the mangroves.
Okay.
You're pulling out either snook, redfish, etc. Here, just due to the tide swing, the water's moving extremely fast here. So one thing I learned up here that I had not previously used in Florida was slip corks. I know they're down there. I've never really been exposed to them, but basically, you know, if you're going to fish like some structure up here and you got a fast moving tide, and, you know, hey, I think the trout or the redfish might be a little bit deeper, you're using, you know, like an adjustable slip cork.
Yeah.
So that, you know, if I'm targeting trout, I'm mainly using that. For redfish, as of recently, I've been using a lot of artificials. You know, like a 3-inch white gulp shrimp on a jig head.
Okay.
Just basically just kind of, you know, working it real slow, especially with the cold weather we had, the cold snaps we had. I know you guys had a pretty significant cold snap down there, and it affected us up here as well. So fish were a little bit more lethargic up here. But, you know, it really, you know, it differs from day to day on like what type of tactic I'm going to use to go after reds. You know, it's all on the tide, you know, the weather, etc.
Yeah, I guess I had heard you mentioned South Carolina there, and I guess I had heard from some people that had fished with guides up there that I talked to that, you know, with that moving water you get and with the marsh where it's a little muddy, I guess, that the water's more turbid, and so a lot of times they really like to use the shrimp and other things that the fish can find a little easier than artificial. So it sounded like there was a lot more preference towards live bait than artificials up there. I was just wondering if that was your experience or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first things I did get when I got up here is I hired a guide, and I just said, hey, look, you know, I don't know. I want you to show me how to fish. Don't take me to your honey holes. I need to know how to fish in the low country. And basically, you know, where in Florida I probably use like, you know, I could throw an artificial or something. They were throwing like, you know, either a, you know, big live shrimp, throwing it towards like a grass line on a Spartini grass, or actually the guide was ripping off the heads of the shrimp and throwing it on a popping cork and throwing it into the actual like Spartina grass. And so kind of asked him, like, why are you doing that? And he was like, well, hey, you know, obviously redfish are, you know, they're actually like a bottom feeder in a sense. So they're attracted to the scent, you know, so that's a tactic I've seen used up here.
Yeah.
Guys will get big shrimp, and they'll just like leave them outside for like a day or two and just let them get as sneaky as they can, and then just throw it out, you know. And that's kind of how they target them up here. That's one way they target them up here.
Yeah, that's not the happy wife plan when she comes home and smells that shrimp that's been stinking.
No. Yeah, my garage freezer has smelled a few times. I've got an earful a couple times for it.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm not the only one then, because I'll come home and I've cast netted something, and you invariably leave one in the bottom of the cast net or something, and next 2 days later the garage is getting pretty ripe, and yeah, you get an earful about that for sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. Well, when we get back, Quinn is going to share with us an epic redfish story. So hang in there and we'll be right back. An anchor stick for kayaks and small boats is a great asset to have on board when you want to stop and fish an area, or when you want to get out and wade. When the wind is honking, a great anchor pole that can keep you planted is a must. Check out the one we like at tell.fish/gear in your web browser. Okay. We are back with Quinn Hollingsworth, and we've been talking about redfishing up there in his waters in the Savannah area, and also a little bit in South Carolina. And it's been really cool talking with him because he's also a Florida native who's fished the Mosquito Lagoon down here. So he's got a really good perspective on all these different areas where you redfish. So I understand your most epic day of fishing is a redfish story. So we got lots of places to choose from, but which one were you fishing in, and what happened?
Yeah, so it's actually I'd say my most epic day was really just a couple weeks ago. We were I got a buddy. He's in the Marines. He's actually a drill instructor up at Paris Island, and Paris Island's up in Beaufort. It's probably 45 to 50 minutes north of here in Savannah.
Okay.
So short drive. Me and him had been fishing some creeks around Beaufort, and we'd found a creek that you couldn't get to by boat, but when it bottomed out at low tide, there was oyster rigs to the left, oyster rigs to the right, and we were pulling some pretty good redfish out of there. my best fishing buddy is definitely my son. He's 8, and he's been fishing with me probably now since he was 4. But he's at the age now where he can kind of handle his own.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's been, that's why I love to take fishing with me. So kind of went a little bit of low expectation, like, hey, I think we'll probably pull a few reds out of here. If not, whatever. Hey, it's better than sitting in the house. We're fishing, so day on the water is better than any day sitting inside.
Absolutely.
So, to get to this spot, though, you really got to have your mud boots on. I mean, we're really trekking through quite a bit of mud. So, if anybody's been to the Low Country, we got just terrible muck all through the marshes. But
yeah.
The juice is worth the squeeze, with this creek. So, I told my son Evan, I'm like, hey man, get your mud boots on. We're going to be trekking through here. So I'm pulling all my gear and tackle, and he's got his one fishing pole in his hand, and we're trekking through the mud, and we get down to the spot, and me and my buddy had just on a whim. I had on the way to the spot. There's tons of fiddler crabs everywhere, and so
yeah.
I'd never really fished with fiddlers, except for, catching sheep's head.
Right.
We started picking up some fiddler crabs, throwing them in a bucket, and, we get down to the spot, and I put some fiddlers on a jig head, of all things. I know it sounds crazy, but put 2 fiddlers on a jig head, threw it out for my son, and we're in this creek, and, less than 1 minute later, his drag starts screaming. So, what seemed like one after another, basically my son ended up catching 17 redfish.
Whoa.
All within a lot. Yeah, 17. And, it was all catch and release, just due to the harsh freeze we had recently. And, but yeah, my son just one after another was catching redfish after redfish after redfish. And, it was so busy I didn't even get to fish much, but I don't care, my best bud's catching fish, and, I'm helping him get fish off the hook, or, chasing fiddler crabs around the bank, trying to throw more on the hook for him. And, he ended up catching 17 slot redfish.
Wow.
And I ended up, I think, catching like 6 or 7, and my buddy, he caught like another 5 or 6. So, it was 26, 27 redfish, all within like about an hour and a half we fished. So, it was definitely pretty special, and it was just great to see, my son Evan kind of out there handling it on his own and kind of just blossoming into this little angler that he's becoming. And, he was just absolutely ate up with it. And you could just see, like, I could see how I was when I was his age, and how much, fishing, brought joy to me, and I could see it, through my son. And, for me, that's pretty much, just, that's the best thing a father could ever ask for. And, especially doing something I love and sharing it with my son. And so for me, that was my absolutely most epic day of fishing.
Oh man, I can totally relate to that. I don't think I've had a 17 redfish day with my sons. Maybe 1 or 2 that was close, but I guarantee that's a day that neither you nor he will ever forget. That's a special time. Yeah,
and thanks to technology, if anybody does happen to stumble upon my Instagram page, I actually put a video up of one of the 17 fish.
Cool.
You can see him reeling it in off that little muddy bank we were in. But yeah, he loved it.
Yeah, well, actually, we're going to have a link to your Instagram page on our show notes when we release your episode. So hopefully that'll make it easier for everybody to find that. Man, how cool is that? So is this this creek you were up in, was it wasn't isolated, was it? I mean, it hadn't got to where, there was a negative tide and they were all trapped up in there. You just kind of caught them at the right time when they were back up in there?
Well, no, that's the funny thing is actually they were isolated.
They were?
So,
okay.
Yeah, and so, but we didn't know like they were going to be isolated. I didn't know for sure. I mean, I'd seen it on a low tide. I think that day we had a almost negative 1 foot tide.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That day. And so, basically when that when it hit dead low, it was bottomed out. And basically that creek, to the far left is just a huge mound of oyster rigs, and then to the right is a huge mound of oyster rigs. And then literally right in front of you, you're probably looking at, even at dead low, maybe like a 6 to 7 foot hole.
Yeah.
And so these redfish were just stacked up in there. And I mean, anywhere from 17 inches to, my buddy caught probably 31 inch redfish. And, I can only guess, just based upon redfish, habits, is dolphins can't get to them, predators can't get to them.
Yep.
And so they're basically in there, hiding out during that low tide. And so, it's just a lucky place that, we fish, and just that day just happened to, the stars aligned. And so, that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, and it sounds like they've got all the fiddler crabs they can eat back there.
They do, yes, absolutely. And, it's funny because since that day, that's all we've been throwing now is fiddler crabs. And
really?
If you would have told me, 2 months ago, hey, throw a couple fiddlers on a jig head and you'll catch redfish, I would have laughed at you. But, it makes sense, though, because juvenile redfish from, maybe 1 to 2 to 3 years old, I don't quote me, but I think like 60 to 70% of their diet is almost fiddler crabs. And,
yeah.
Especially up here, on our big flood tides, the redfish, get up in the grass and they're eating fiddler crabs. And so, basically that's been our go-to bait. We went last Saturday, and all we threw was fiddlers, and we caught black drum, redfish, couple sheephead, by some structure. But we've absolutely been killing them on fiddlers lately.
Yeah, and so you said you just put them on like a swim jig head, not a circle hook or anything?
No, so we just had just a small little jig head, and we were, again, it was just a flim, just threw it out there, and happened to get some, and we've found that these black with gold flake jig heads with a little eye on each side seems to attract them more than anything. Because we've thrown circle hooks out there with fiddlers now, and it just seems this black with gold flake jig head seems to attract them, at least up here. So that's what we've been throwing at them.
Yeah, and in this pond, you said it was not really pond, the creek, but the hole that they were in was several feet deep, right? So you couldn't necessarily see the fish. You were just, getting hits and then reeling them in. You would feel them on the line.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Correct, yeah. So, tail and redfish up here, there is flats. Flats in Savannah, there's flats up in Beaufort, all the way up to Charleston, but not necessarily in the sense that you would think down in the Mosquito Lagoon.
Right.
So on the flood tide, you can see redfish tailing up here, and they'll be in the grass, up in the Spartina grass. But this particular creek that we fish, you can't see them. Unless, the tide's moving real fast and it's not dead low, we can and the water's clear.
Mm-hmm.
You can see them schooling through and moving through the creek. But other than that, no, we really couldn't see them. We were just kind of tossing it into this hole.
Got it. Yeah. Wow. How neat is that? So just kind of tried something different on a whim, and next thing you know, you got a double dozen of redfish there.
Yeah. We lucked out. It was pretty incredible, and you're always learning something when you're fishing. That's all I can tell you.
Right. Well, and like you were saying, especially where you've got a big moving tide, because that really adds a lot more complication, about how you have to approach things and where you need to be when, on those different phases
Absolutely.
of the tide. Well, that is spectacular, that you got to spend that time with your son. And like I say, some of my earliest memories from fishing go back to when I was 5 years old. So, I can pretty well guarantee he will never forget that day. What an awesome day you were able to share with him.
Yeah, it was. It was definitely special.
Yep. Well, cool. So, how are you going to top that one? Where, he's going to expect, to catch 20 or 30 next time.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because this weekend he was already. We tried a different spot, near the creek, but we tried a different spot, and we'd only pulled up like a couple black drum, a couple small reds, and he was like, "Dad, I want to go fish the creek," And I'm like, "Oh man." He wants to Instagram. I think I set the bar too high for myself.
Yeah,
first,
Yeah, no kidding. You're supposed to work them up to that, not give them the full Monty on the first go round there. But
yeah, exactly.
But that's what it's all about. Now you've got another high bar to chase and try and break. So
that's right.
I'm sure you guys will get after it and get that done before you know it. So
yeah,
man, that's awesome. Well, Quinn, what a cool story, man. That brings back such good memories, for me personally. Fishing with my own boys as they're growing up, and still get to fish with them son, even though they're now a little older. But just awesome, and really glad you came on and shared that with us today. Thank you so much.
No, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure, and I really enjoyed the podcast, and I'm just stoked I could share my good time with you guys.
Do you know someone who would be a great guest on the Telltale Fisherman? If so, go to tell.fish/guest and recommend them for the show. We'll give them the chance to share the story of their lifetime. Visit tell.fish/guest.
This has been the Telltale Fisherman Podcast. Thanks for sharing another great tale with us. Be sure to check out the show notes page for more info on today's show and the gear we talked about. Keep those lines tight, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Telltale Fisherman Podcast.